guys, welcome to Priceless B Movies. I'm your host, Colin Price. And while this page is primarily for my reviews, I do every so often like to do like a top 10 or some kind of retrospective. I kind of like to keep it fresh, and these kinds of videos allow me to talk about things that maybe I don't always have the time or thought or inclination to talk about during a specific review. I was kind of trying to think, because there's a lot of everything from like Watch Mojo to What Culture. There's a lot of different pages on YouTube that do top 10s with films. So I know I won't always be successful, but I try to come up with topics that I feel like I can give an original spin on, or just something that I think doesn't get talked about enough. So in the spirit, I would like to talk about my top 10 female villains in horror. And when we talk about horror movies, we always talk about, the real popular guys, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers, Candyman, Pinhead, Leatherface, the list goes on. They're all men. And I do think that every so often we should take some time and appreciate the villains in horror that are, deadlier than the male. Or, as a great man once put it,
to all the girls I've loved on screen. For instance, Stephen King's Christine.
Starting off our list at number 10 is going to be Felissa Rose as Angela in Sleepaway Camp. Now, I know I could always say, Pamela Springsteen, Bruce's sister, played the character in parts 2 and 3, but I specifically want to talk about just the original. There's going to be a couple of actresses in this list where there was more than one film, but in just about every case, I'm going to be talking about the first movie. Felissa Rose's Angela in the first Sleepaway Camp is really a revelation. She doesn't have much dialogue outside of maybe 2 or 3 lines sprinkled throughout the film. And she has to do a lot with her eyes. She has this very expressive face. And even if you can kind of see the ending coming, and I know that the twist ending of this movie has a lot of people these days kind of up in arms with political correctness. I'm not here to discuss that crap. I don't really care either way. But I think that this movie wouldn't have the impact that it does if they had had a lesser talent for the role. Felissa Rose, especially at such a young age, had to convey so much and had to understand so much about this character that had to have been kind of off for someone who is, 12 or 13 years old in the early 80s? Sleepaway Camp may not be the perfect movie. I don't hold it in such a high regard as a lot of people do, but Felissa Rose definitely deserves credit for her work here, and that's why she's at number 10.
Please forgive me. Please.
Meet me at the waterfront after the social.
Number 9 is going to be Piper Laurie as Margaret White in Carrie. That's the original Carrie, not the remake. While I don't mind the remake, I actually think it's fairly decent. I know a lot of people can't stand it. I'm here to talk about the original, the OG. Piper Laurie, I believe, even won an Oscar for this movie as the main character's overly religious and incredibly disturbed mother. I recently did a review of the movie Longlegs that just came out with Nicolas Cage, where I singled out Alicia Witt. She's the mother of the protagonist in that film, and she's a very similar character. This oddly religious, very quiet, very subdued, but can lash out when you least expect it kind of character. And I actually got to meet Piper Laurie a few years ago before she unfortunately passed. She's no longer with us. And she was just the sweetest old lady. It's interesting. The people who play the best villains are always like the nicest people in person. I swear when I met her, I was like, she was like that little old lady who would like bake cookies for all of the neighborhood kids. And I'm like, this is Piper Laurie. This is the mom in Carrie who's chasing Sissy Spacek down the stairs with a butcher knife and that slasher smile that still gives me nightmares to this day. The only reason that Piper Laurie isn't higher up in this list is because there are a couple of line deliveries she has that I never completely bought into. I think she does cross over into camp just a couple times too many for my taste, but she does still give an incredibly effective performance. I think that that's one that she's going to go down in the books for. She's definitely down in my book for it.
We pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Number 8, and just one of a few names that I'm sure I'm going to butcher, is Lisa Schrage as Mary Lou Maloney in Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. This sequel in name only revolves around Mary Lou Maloney, who is this rebellious, sexually liberated young woman. I think it was like in the opening, they're in like the late 50s or early 60s. Anyway, she's definitely kind of the bad girl, and during prom night, she cheats on her date and boyfriend, and then he gets mad and accidentally, sets her on fire. She burned him, and then he burned her. Now, decades later, that guy is the principal of that high school, and the ghost of Mary Lou Maloney is now deciding to get her revenge against him by attacking his son and possessing his son's girlfriend to once again be the prom queen. Artsy, bloody, and genuinely frightening. I really mean that. Genuinely frightening. I get chills when I watch this movie. Hello, Mary Lou Prom Night 2 is a criminally underrated film. And it's in no small part due to Lisa Strage's very brief, but incredibly chilling and fun performance. Number 7 is going to be Isabel Fuhrman as Esther in Orphan. Now, I can't get too much into this because I haven't actually seen the Orphan sequel yet, Orphan First Kill. I downloaded it a while ago. I got it on VOD, but I haven't had a chance to check it out yet. I'm strictly, once again, going by the first film in these franchises. I think when Orphan came out, we were all kind of surprised by it, right? I mean, seriously, who actually saw that ending coming? No, you did not. Don't you dare lie to me. You did not see that ending coming. I remember sitting in the theater watching the trailers for this film, and everyone thought she was a ghost or she was a demon. No one thought she was just a child, but no one could accurately predict where this movie was going. Orphan is another movie that I reviewed on this page several years ago, and I believe that in that review, I singled out the child acting, because it wasn't just for Isabel Fuhrman as Esther, but all three of the child actors are really good, often outshining the adult actors in this film. Esther is this little Russian girl who is adopted by this family after they lose a child, and she kind of starts to, we've all seen these bad seed evil kid movies. She kind of starts to manipulate each member of the family in her own way, and then you find out that, she definitely has intentions that are devious and bordering on murderous. It's amazing the amount of talent that Isabel Fuhrman had at a young age. Like Felissa Rose, she really is able to embody this character, and this character really does come with challenges. Like I said, no one could have predicted the twist ending to this movie, but just in case you haven't seen it, I'm not going to give it away here. I will say that to understand those kinds of themes that came with that character, Isabel Fuhrman is very obviously talented, but also very wise beyond her years to be able to effectively portray some of these sequences. It's a performance that I'm in awe at every time I watch that movie, and I really do wish that the film got more credit than it does.
Do you want to play?
Number 6 is Natasha Henstridge as Syl in Species. Before I get into this one, I do want to say that I almost put Mathilda May from Life Force on this list, but I didn't really want to have two characters that were like seductive humanoids from outer space on one list. I'm just weighing it, and I decided Mathilda May, honorable mention, but Natasha Henstridge really does have to take this spot. Syl is a synthetic alien-human hybrid who's grown in a lab and evolves into Natasha Henstridge. All the myths I've been hearing about Canadian models are apparently a lie. Syl manages to escape captivity, and now it's up to a group of scientists and bounty hunters to track her down and terminate her before she can give in to her biological instincts and mate, thus potentially causing an outbreak of alien monsters in the world. The real challenge for Natasha Henstridge here, outside of only being seen for how just incredible she looks, was to kind of carry this childlike amusement at everything. She's really, even though she's in the form of a grown woman for most of the film, she is still in her mind kind of learning everything. There's this sense of wonder and curiosity that she carries with her that almost makes her character even more alluring, and then you have to remind yourself, oh yeah, this is a damn alien. Beautiful, captivating, but undeniably deadly. Of course, Natasha Henstridge had to make this list.
Please, let me go. I wouldn't hurt you. I promise. I wouldn't hurt you.
Yes, course you would. You just don't know it yet.
Number 5, and the next name that I'm definitely going to butcher, Sheena as Asami in Audition. Audition is more or less the overseas version of Fatal Attraction, except far more intense, far creepier, and it definitely takes you by the balls, so to speak, toward the end of it. Sheena as Asami is essential to making this movie work. She does have this slight air of menace from the get-go. From the first time you see this girl, you look at her face, and you can see she's got that thin, kind of sly smile that's barely perceptible, and that look in her eyes like she's just got something kind of dead inside of her, but also somewhat malevolent, but she's also undeniably pretty. These traits really help characters like this, who are ultimately going to be revealed for being, villainous toward the end of the film. But the way that this character is written, and I have read the book Audition that this is based off of, I will say that book it kind of lets the cat out of the bag a lot quicker than the movie does. But once you get to the final 20 minutes of Audition, this is pure nightmare fuel. I'm going to be completely honest. I didn't date for a year or two after I watched this movie. This movie really scared the crap out of me the first time I saw it. It is incredibly powerful and disturbing, and it wouldn't be nearly what it is without Sheena's wonderful performance as Asami. Number 4 is going to be Kathy Bates as Annie Wilkes in Misery. That's right, the unsinkable Molly Brown herself had to make this list. Is there anyone who has ever made a list like this ever, and Kathy Bates has not been on that list for this movie? Misery, of course, tells the story of author Paul Sheldon, who has become bored with his franchise of books, the Misery books that he's been writing. Misery Chastain is the main character. He just really wants to move on to something else, so he writes what is to be the final book in the Misery series, but then he's in a car accident, and he's lucky enough to be rescued by a nurse named Annie Wilkes, Kathy Bates' character. And as she's nursing him back to health, she reveals to him she's his #1 fan. She's read all of his books. She loves the Misery books. She lives in a farmhouse, and she has a sow that she names Misery. This is an obsessive character. The problem is Paul Sheldon has broken both his legs in this car crash. He is not going to be up and running around anytime soon. And then his #1 fan, who may not be all there, sees his last book and realizes that he's going to kill her favorite character. The rest of the movie is one long, tense sequence after another, after another, after another, of Paul Sheldon trying to figure out a way to escape from her psychotic and murderous wrath. Kathy Bates as Annie Wilkes does something that a lot of female villains either can't do or aren't allowed to do, which is she actually brings this disarming sense of humor to the role. She can start any scene as nice and pleasant and goofy, and then just in a heartbeat become this absolute monster. It is really unpredictable and really scary. I'm on my toes throughout the film every time I watch this, even though I know what's going to happen because I've seen it like 6 times now. This movie always puts me on edge. There's a reason why Kathy Bates is a queen among actresses in general. This movie is definitely an awesome notch on her belt.
Annie, for God's...
Shh, darling. Trust me.
God's sake.
It's for the best.
Annie, please!
Number 3 is Angelica Houston as the Grand High Witch in The Witches. Okay, seriously, was there anyone who watched this movie as a kid and wasn't traumatized by that scene where they all take their faces off and you see the witches for the first time? Based off the Roald Dahl book of the same name, The Witches is about a young boy who goes with his grandmother to stay at a hotel following his parents' death. And the hotel is putting on a convention, and it turns out that all the women who are involved in this convention are witches. They are one huge coven, and they have a plan to attack and kill every child in the world by turning them into mice. Angelica Houston definitely makes some interesting choices with her performance in this one. She's got this really weird thick accent that I think would be absolutely ludicrous coming from anyone else, but she pulls it off. Also, is it just me, or is there something weirdly unsettling about how much hip thrusting Angelica Houston does in this movie, especially when there's like the child actors around her? There are just some little ticks and acting choices that she makes in this movie that are just kind of off the wall and bizarre. And I do think that kind of adds to the inherent creepiness of the character. For someone who is so ugly and hideous underneath the makeup and the fake mask and all that, she's actually far spookier when it's just Angelica Houston. This was an incredibly effective performance. I think that every kid, like I said, was probably scarred when they saw this movie for the first time. Just that scene where she's trying to get the kids' attention, and so she sees a baby in a stroller and pushes it down the hill just to figure out where the boy is, because she knows that he'll try to save the baby. This is a very sinister, very evil character, and very befitting of what used to be a time when you could do stuff like that in a kid's movie and not get canceled.
My orders are that every child in England shall be rubbed out, destroyed.
Number 2 is Davy Chase as Samara Morgan in The Ring. Now, for those of you who are going to get on me for not putting Sadako from the Japanese version of this on this list, I do love Ringu. I do. I think it's a wonderful movie. I don't think that Ringu or The Ring, like that one of them is better than the other. I think that they're both 4-star horror films. But I do think that in the remake, you get a little more backstory for the character, and the actress gets a little more time to show different aspects. I think that in the remake, they do a much better job of kind of throwing you off. Of course, this movie's kind of like The Sixth Sense. We all know the ending of The Ring. But I do think that the remake did a better job of throwing you off and thinking that this little girl is more of a victim than we would eventually find out she is. Once again, so much respect for the child actresses who are in these movies and being able to convey and being able to be legitimately frightening. You don't normally think of children being able to be these monsters who, are capable of such horror and destruction. The Ring is one of the few movies that I've seen in my life that has legitimately given me nightmares. I think that it is a horror movie that will continue to stand the test of time, whether we are looking at the Japanese version or the American version. If I remember correctly, Davy Chase actually won the Best Villain Award at the MTV Movie Awards that year. And come to think of it, that might have been the last time that someone won an MTV Movie Award and was actually deserving of winning an award.
You don't want to hurt anyone.
But I do. And I'm sorry. It won't stop.
And finally, we're at number 1. And for anyone who's been following my page or who knows me personally, this shouldn't come as any surprise to anyone. My number 1 pick for the best female villain in horror is Emilia Kincaid as Angela Franklin in Night of the Demons. Night of the Demons is, of course, a movie that I've discussed on this page many, many times. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, definitely one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I've always had a soft spot for this film. It revolves around a group of high schoolers who look like they're 30 years old, who end up going to a supposedly haunted mortuary and having a Halloween party. Once there, of course, because they're all so brilliant, they decide to have a seance. Now there's demons possessing them, so we basically have like Evil Dead by way of Hell Night. Angela Franklin is the girl hosting the party, and there's so many memorable moments in this movie, to say nothing of her dance sequence halfway through, that at this point is just legend in horror. Even simple moments where she reveals that she's literally roasting her hands in a fireplace are absolutely chilling. But in addition to being creepy on screen, I'm not going to lie, these movies kind of started my little thing of being attracted to goth girls when I was a teenager. I really blame this movie for that. It's a shame that Emilia Kincaid never went on to act in too much else other than these films, but I do understand she's doing her current work right now and is very passionate about it. Still, if you're gonna only do one franchise, do it well. And I think she definitely did.
You did remember to invite some cute boys to the party, I hope.
Of course I did. And we're gonna scare the shit out of them.
That's my list for my top 10 favorite female villains in horror. I hope you enjoyed it. If you agree with me, let me know. If you don't agree with me, let me know. Comment below. Did I miss any that should be on this list? What are some of your favorites? What are some that you think are overrated? Give me your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay tuned for more Priceless B movies.